Okay, let's just jump right into a question you think you know the answer to. Where does a tree come from? It's simple, right? A seed goes in the ground, you add water, sunshine, and, a tree grows. But what if I told you the most obvious part of that story, the part about the ground, is almost completely wrong? To really get this, we have to think about scale. I mean, a big, mature oak tree can easily weigh 10,000 pounds. That's 5 tons of solid stuff, wood, bark, leaves, roots, that just wasn't there before. So the real question is, where did all that mass actually come from? I mean, think about it. You start with this tiny little seed, an acorn, that weighs practically nothing, and it turns into this 5-ton giant. Where did the other 9,999 pounds of stuff originate? It has to come from somewhere, right? And look, the answer that pops into pretty much everyone's head, the one that just feels right, is the ground. I mean, the tree has roots, the roots are in the soil, so it must be pulling stuff out of the soil to build itself. It's just common sense. And, as we're about to see, it's totally wrong. Now, believe it or not, this isn't some new mystery. People started trying to figure this out centuries ago, and what they found completely tears down our most basic ideas about how the world works. So let's look at the evidence. So back in the 1600s, this scientist, Jan Baptista van Helmont, came up with this brilliant and really simple experiment. He took a pot of soil, dried it out completely, and weighed it precisely. He did the same with a small 5-pound willow tree. Then he planted the tree, and for 5 years he gave it nothing but water. After the 5 years were up, he weighed everything again. And the results were just wild. After 5 years, that little willow tree had gained 164 pounds. It went from just 5 pounds to 169 pounds. That is a huge amount of new tree. So obviously that had to have come from the soil, right? Well, nope, not even close. When Van Helmont dried and reweighed the soil, he found that it had lost a mere 2 ounces. That's it. Let that sink in for a second. The tree created 164 pounds of itself, and the soil it grew in barely even changed. I mean, the numbers just make it so clear. You have a gain of over 2,600 ounces for the tree, and a loss of only 2 ounces from the soil. The math just doesn't work. It's undeniable. The vast, vast majority of the tree is not made of dirt. Okay, so we've got to find another suspect. And the next logical one is the water. I mean, that's the only other thing Van Helmont was adding. And we know big trees can drink hundreds of gallons a day. So surely that's where all the mass is coming from. But this idea hits a wall at a really basic chemical level. See, wood, the solid stuff of a tree, is about half carbon. It's a carbon-based structure. And water, H2O, is made of hydrogen and oxygen. There's 0 carbon in a water molecule. You just can't build something out of an ingredient you don't have. So, let's recap. If the tree isn't made of soil and it isn't made of water, what in the world is left? Well, the answer has been floating all around us this entire time, completely invisible, hiding in plain sight. This is it. This is the mind-bending truth of it all. A tree is, in the most literal sense you can imagine, solidified air. The thousands of pounds of dense, heavy wood you see in an oak tree are built almost entirely from a gas that it pulled out of the atmosphere. And that raw material is carbon dioxide, or CO2. It's this invisible gas that makes up a teeny tiny fraction of our atmosphere, just 0.04%, and it's the stuff we breathe out. Trees breathe it in through these little pores in their leaves, and it is the only place they get the carbon they need to build themselves. And the breakdown is pretty incredible. If you take all the water out of a tree, what's left, the dry mass, is about 50% carbon, almost all of it from the air. And remember those minerals from the soil that seemed so important? Yeah, they make up a tiny fraction, like 2%. It's basically nothing. Okay, so trees are built from thin air. But how? How does a plant take an invisible, weightless gas and turn into a solid log you can knock on? This is where nature gets really clever. It's like alchemy, but it's real. We've all heard the word photosynthesis, but let's think about it like a factory. So first, the tree brings in its raw materials, sunlight and CO2. It uses the energy from the sunlight to literally crack open those CO2 molecules. It keeps the carbon atom and then just tosses the oxygen away, which is handy for us.
Then it links those carbon atoms together to build simple sugars like glucose. And finally, it takes thousands of those sugar molecules and chains them all together to create cellulose. That's the strong, fibrous stuff we call wood.
So really, the next time you see a tree or knock on a wooden door, just remember this. You are touching something that used to be an invisible gas floating around in the sky that was captured and assembled using the power of the sun. It is quite literally crystallized atmosphere. And this is where the whole idea gets even crazier, and honestly a lot more personal. Because this process, this whole story, it doesn't just stop with trees. It's also your story. Seriously, every single piece of food you've ever eaten, whether it's a carrot from the ground or a steak from a cow that ate grass, all of it ultimately gets its carbon from this exact same process. Which means the carbon atoms that make up your muscles, your bones, your brain, every single one of them was, not that long ago, just floating free in the air as carbon dioxide.
Just think about that journey for a second. A single atom of carbon is floating in the air. It gets pulled into a leaf. The plant turns it into a molecule of sugar. An animal eats that plant, and then you eat that animal, or the plant. And now that exact same atom that was once part of the sky is part of you. You aren't made of dirt. You are made of air and sunlight.
You know, some people worry that when you learn the science behind something beautiful, it kind of ruins the magic. But I have always felt it's the exact opposite. Knowing what's really going on just makes everything that much more amazing. The great physicist Richard Feynman put it perfectly. Understanding the incredible, intricate biology of how a flower works doesn't make it any less beautiful. It adds a whole new layer of beauty, a deeper kind of awe at just how elegant it all is.
And that, really, is the whole point. When you look at some massive, ancient tree, you're not seeing a column of dirt that somehow stood up. You are looking at a physical monument built out of thin air. You're seeing hundreds of years of sunlight that has been captured and forged into solid matter.
So seriously, the next time you walk through a forest or even just a park, just stop for a second and really look. Realize that you're standing in the middle of a world that was sculpted not from the ground beneath your feet, but from the invisible sky all around you. And well, that kind of changes everything, doesn't it?